you'd bring out the questions, well, you know, what did Jesus have to say about it? In other words, if they would agree that Jesus is God, well, what did Jesus say about Adam and Eve? You know, and he talks about them in the garden. And then you talk about God as the idea of, you know.
Well, wait a minute. If you're going to say if you're going to turn around and ask them if they're seekers, they're not going to know what Jesus said.
But if a lot of people come with a real confidence in Jesus as being an authority,
right?
Okay, even if he's not God, he's an authority. So if you believe that he's an authority and he speaks to Adam and Eve with authority and says that it did exist, then that's something to bring up. The other thing is God is the other way.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. What I'm asking is, where does he say that? Where does Jesus say that?
I think it's in Matthew. That's why you have to do your homework.
I'm doing my homework.
Yeah, I read it just the other day, actually.
Was it just the other day?
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll email it to you. I did too. I read it just recently.
Yeah.
But it's a good question still to throw out to the whole table, because you may have other women at the table who can respond to that question with some.
Yes, and a good answer I always like too is, you know, and it goes to Doug's message, you know, when we read the Bible, it's about me, you know, or we. Yeah. But if you think about it as him, then God is God. God can do anything. Why can't he create Adam and Eve in a garden and put a tree there and have a serpent that talks? That's whatever, you know, but and some things you're not going to convince everybody, but there's things you can do that you would anticipate that question.
Let me throw one thing in there, yeah. So, I mean, I can't remember exactly what Andy says in which CDs. I've listened to him in so many different times in different sequences, but you know, your general point, I didn't get your name next to Brenda.
Rachel.
About, you know, if you have a seeker coming in, you can't use Jesus as you're starting the foundation of your argument because they may not buy Jesus yet, so you can't say Jesus, right? So the way that Stanley approaches this, and the way that, you know, if you're trying to approach this whole idea of Christianity from sort of a, you know, court case perspective, or like let's lay the foundation here logically, that's not going to do it, right? It's going to require faith at some point, but to try to, you know, make the whole thing sort of fit together. You know, what Andy does is, right, he says, let's focus on the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's talk about that. You know, he starts out, you probably all listen to the one in Scripture, right? Let's compare this to Roman history. Everybody buys Roman history, you know, that whole thing I'm sure you guys talked about, right? Mm-hmm. As one way to sort of get people to say, all right, everybody believes Roman history, nobody dare doubt that, but what's the most recent copy of that document versus the most recent copy of the New Testament? How many copies are available? Who are the authors? What were their motivations? Like, it starts to get you something, right? So what Stanley says is, let's focus on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's get the belief in the New Testament first, really. Right. And then once you buy into Jesus, then you can go back and say, and I think he says in one of the CDs, like, you know, did Jonah get swallowed by a big fish and spit out or not? I don't know. I mean, Jesus does. I'm going with Jesus. He says, you know, he's not shooting it down. That's good for me. Yeah. You know, that's
Jesus believed it, so
you're gonna have a hard time proving to somebody that Jonah got swallowed by a fish and spit out the side. That's not really. You know, it may or may not have happened, and frankly, is it critical to the central message of Christianity? I mean, it's not really what we're trying to get to in this coursework, right? I mean, this is really about talking about relationships, whereas God is trying to meet you and he wants to be with you, and this is not about a commandment, you do this or else. It's about God, why are we created? Why does God want to interact with us? So that's, you know, you don't really want to go down that path. I mean, that's a whole separate discussion, right? Where you can break down to go into that. So, you know, whether some of Genesis could be poetic or allegorical or whatever. So if you don't want that to be a whole piece of the discussion. I think you can almost even just, you know, open to anybody's opinion and thoughts on this. But like, if I was in that situation, or the times that we have been a little bit, I really don't turn that into a point of contention. Really, you almost even just give on it. Like, it could be people have different thoughts on, you know, the message of Genesis is the same regardless of whether it's perfectly literal or poetic potentially. I mean, it's still telling about an all-powerful God who created us, right? So kind of go that way and don't really get into that debate.
We don't always have the answers. So.
And by doing that, you absolutely take the wind out of the sail on the argument. And I can think of a few gals that they're hung up on this. And this is the thing. Well, I think it was written by, okay. So you take the wind out of the sails right there, we kind of like dismiss it. Well, maybe, but let's go on to the
You know, there's that, one more thing I'll say, the PDFs, there's that one that says, what about the dinosaurs? Right? Like, that kind of fits into this argument. All those PDFs are great. They're 2 pages, they're concise, they acknowledge that there's another side of the argument. They don't just sound like a used car salesman trying to, you know, persuade you, right? So just read that, right? And that's another way to sort of talk about it without turning that into the central issue starting point.
Well, Andy does that 2-second thing on Where are my words tonight? On people's history, saying that these are real people. I'm giving you their genealogy so that you'll see that they're real people, not mythological figures. So, and that's the place to take that kind of concept to, Rach.
Okay, let's we just jump to page 40. I hate to page 48, the third question, and it's really a good one. In fact, last session, one of the ladies in it, she was just really troubled by this and trying to look for answers. Is why do you think God gave Adam and Eve the choice to disobey him in the first place? The question she had was, why did he tempt them like that?
She thought he was a bad God.
Yeah. So why do you think God gave Adam and Eve the choice to disobey him in the first place?
Well, I think.
What do you mean by choice?
Well, they didn't have to eat the apple or the fruit.
That's because he created us with self-will.
Okay.
And so being created with self-will, they therefore had the choice. Did they trust God enough to believe him that he was going to take care of them and that they were going to know everything they needed to know, and they made the decision, no.
So the idea of free will.
Yes.
Okay. Were you going to say the
Well, I was
same?
just going to say that I have said in the past it would be like having robots.
Yeah.
We wouldn't really be people. You could just, like a robot, you push a
Yeah.
button, it does what you tell it.
Yeah.
And that isn't what God intended.
It's really a mystery, though, isn't it? The idea of free will, that God creates all this, and he wants a perfect world. You know, he'd like, but yet he gives us a choice to make mistakes.
Because he loves us?
Huh?
Because he loves us?
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't have free will, like you say, what kind of existence would that be? In fact, there kind of like would be no good and evil. I mean, it's just, you just do whatever.
Well, think if you had a child who never did anything wrong, and he or she is just standing around waiting for you to tell him or her what to do. I mean, would that be how you really want your offspring to be?
Yeah.
I mean, I wish mine had never misbehaved.
That's honesty award.
I wouldn't really. Mine have grown up and gone, so I don't have to worry about it anymore.
But,
No, but the other part of that
Good
part
answer,
too
though.
is that what that would mean is if you did not have free will, you would not have the free will to love God back.
Right.
You know,
I like
and you
that.
want
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
you
You
want
would be no
love
love.
to
just push the button and you did what he said.
Yeah.
There would be no love.
It's
right.
That's right.
It would not exist. Love would not exist if you didn't have free will.
Right. And that's what you want to draw out from this third question, is that concept. Not just that it's free will, you know, but to draw out what you said in terms of what that means in terms of loving God and being a robot. You want to draw people in and say, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And he didn't really tempt them. The idea is because God doesn't tempt. We need to sort of, that comes up also, you know. God tempted them. So you have to go to that and try to dispel that in some fashion the best you can. So there's a lot of issues
It would
there.
be akin to saying, you know, there's a street in front of your house and you tell your children you don't go in the street. You know, you're two, don't go in the street. You know?
One
And
rule.
So, one rule. And the fact that the child would try to go into the street, it
Which
doesn't
they
mean
will.
I'm tempting the child, I'm protecting the child.
There, that's the
Yeah.
perfect
Oh, and
answer.
that is the
So,
great
That's
answer.
the
I mean,
perfect
in reality, that rule is there because they love you.
Exactly.
Because of
That's
so-
exactly where you want the group to go if you can get them to go there. That's perfect. Very good.
the general concept may be obvious to, and everyone in this room may have thought that through and be comfortable with it all, but people in your groups will not be, right? And that, like, hammering that whole point of you got to address this free will question, right? I mean, and that's exactly the way, to me, is the most effective, right? You can't have true love without free will. You know, it wasn't an attempt, it was a rule. I mean, it's you know, why did God have to put the tree there, right? I mean, people have said that in class, right? Why would God put the tree there? That doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem whatever. And I mean, you know, he can choose. The method isn't really important. The point is you had to create this situation where free will could exist, right? And
Here, I'm gonna be honest. I do kind of get tripped up sometimes on this thinking, just because that whole concept he opened up saying, you know, can there be an all-powerful and all-loving God? And I've just kind of boiled it down to that I can't wrap my head around it, because obviously God is all-knowing. He knows the choices we're going to make, right?
Before we do it.
So, and then before we do it, so he created it knowing what was going to happen, but yet there's still free will. So it's almost like you have to hold things that don't necessarily connect, and just have to say, you know what, it must work out somehow because I have faith.
And that's a good answer. I think I've given that one a time. In a sense, you don't. It's such a mystery. It's one of the mysteries of God that you can't, especially the Trinity is another one like that. It's so hard to get your mind around it. At some point, you just have to say that's the way God designed it.
He can be all powerful and he can be all loving. You just have to say he can because he's God and I'm not. I can't figure that out.
Yes, and that's a good answer.
And someone's going to say, why do all these bad things happen? Right?
Well, that's another one.
Well, we're going there. I mean, we're going to 10 minutes story, so we can wait 5 minutes. We can go there now.
Yeah, in fact, go ahead, because we're ready to jump into your section there.
Yeah, I think we're trying to end this by 8 and then start the next chapter. Right? That's our objective here.
Yeah, but just so you know, last week I told people that the minute they met you, all you're going to want to do is get to the tensions in the story. Just so you know.
That's
why he's got this one. He loves this.
Well, so what do you do? Right? How does everyone reconcile this themselves? Again, this group is, I think a little bit different than the typical group that we've dealt with in the class, but still, especially, I mean, how have you reconciled it? Whether it's the broad headline issues, the tsunami, or the Holocaust, or whether it's crazy things that happen in your own personal family, the way people treat each other, or divorce and what that leads to, or alcoholism, whatever it is, right? I mean, all these things, whether it's very personal or very broad, but how can God let it happen? What do you guys think?
What's the last question?
How can God let these horrific things happen? And that maybe that's the way someone's going to ask.
How can bad things happen to good people?
Let it happen, allow it happen, make it happen. You're going to get that question, right? Like, how do you address it?
I believe it was never what he intended for us. Like, he created us to live perfectly in a relationship with him, but we had a choice and we made the wrong one. And so there's evil because of the sin that we introduced into our world.
Okay.
Actually, the sin that was introduced to our world was before we got here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you could say that if things happen bad to me, it's because of some sin that I did. It's basic. It could be, but there's sin. It's the sin of Adam that has come down through the years, has corrupted the whole world. That's one reason why bad things happen to good people. Not something that you specifically did. And that's an important thing, is that the idea that it's Adam's original sin that we're suffering from.
And it affects not just my behavior, my choices, my relationship. It also affects the earth itself, right? Mm-hmm. And so man's relationship to the soil changed, right, at that moment. And so I think the whole tsunami thing falls under the new law that Adam set in motion, which is it's a fallen world. Why do people get cancer? Why do children die? Why does divorce happen? Why do we have tsunamis? I boil it down to the fact that we live in a fallen world. It's Adam's sin, and it changed even Earth.
Yeah.
I remember a pastor saying from a different church, using, I'm sure you've all heard this, about the two words that a 2-year-old knows is no and mine. Mm-hmm. And has anyone ever heard of a parent who had to teach their child to be bad or to lie or steal? And that unfortunately is innately what we are, unless we are directed.
Good illustration.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the question that still begs to be asked is, well, if God is all powerful, why is this even a topic? I mean, why isn't it just? Why didn't He forgive us in a different way? Why was this the answer? And I keep coming back to the fact is that when do your children come to you? But when their friend hurt their feelings. When does your teenager come to you? But when they're broken, when everything's going great, they don't need you. They can do it all on their own. I can make better choices than you. I can make my own dinner. It's better than yours. The list goes on and on of, our will to do it ourselves. And so if we have free will,